Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. I like iTunes. I go on my cell phone or on my iPad and I pull down the music that I want. Some artists have complained because now people don't buy the albums anymore. They pick and choose which songs they want off the albums, and the artists are saying, well, I put this together to be a package and nobody's buying the package. I like that. I like to pick and choose. I like that ability to select what I want to select. I think the gospel writers do that as well. They select the stories that they want to select. John will say later, I suppose if you told all the stories about Jesus, the books in all the world wouldn't hold the stories. So they have been selective, and they do it with a specific goal in mind. Luke is a fascinating writer. For many of you, you will find that your favorite stories in the New Testament are ones told by Luke. Luke writes in a picturesque kind of way. His source is probably Mary and probably Peter, Mary the mother of Jesus and Peter. Luke is not an eyewitness, at least not to the events in the book of Luke. He is an eyewitness to some of the events in the book of Acts, which he also writes. Luke, most of us know, is a physician. Now, a physician in the ancient world was not quite the same as a physician today. While his services were valued, he might have been a slave. He didn't necessarily have to be a free man to be a physician. But that's Luke's background. So he will focus somewhat on the physical aspects of Jesus' ministry as well, and especially in the Passion. There are other factors about Luke's handling. He's a traveling companion of the Apostle Paul on occasion, and a friend of the Apostle Paul's. Paul mentions him several times. If Matthew saw Jesus as the first in a new Israel, Luke sees Jesus as the first in a new humanity. And he sees Jesus as a savior for all of humanity. Now, it's not that Matthew doesn't see that. It's that Matthew focuses on Jesus as this Jewish Messiah, while Luke focuses on Jesus as a Messiah for everybody, for Gentiles as well. He also has a tremendous focus on women. Women play a very prominent and positive role in Luke's account. He selects those stories that put women in a very good light or show Jesus' compassion and love for women. I suspect Luke might have been into poetry or music because the songs or poems that we're familiar with out of the New Testament almost are always in Luke's gospel and nowhere else. He also focuses on those people that others despised, particularly Samaritans. It's interesting in Luke's gospel how many times he highlights a story that Jesus tells that focuses on a Samaritan as a hero, or at least in a positive light in the story. And if in doubt, when somebody says, where does such and such a parable take place? Guess Luke. You're going to be right most of the time, because Luke includes all the favorite parables that you're familiar with. The Good Samaritan, which may or may not be a parable, but the lost coin, the lost sheep, the prodigal son, all of these parables, almost all the parables that you're familiar with, you'll find in the Gospel of Luke. The other thing that Luke does, that the other gospel writers do not do, is Luke has a rather long travel account. He starts when Jesus says, now he set his face to go to Jerusalem. We'll look at this in a later lesson. And then he follows a number of stories that he weaves into the time when Jesus left Galilee to go down to Jerusalem for that Passover at which he dies. There are a number of chapters there that cover that event, and Luke does that while the others don't. Who's he write to? Chapter 1, verse 1. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things which have been accomplished among us, that gives you a hint. Luke already knows that there are other documents out there that tell the story of Christ. Probably he at least has reference to Mark and possibly even Matthew. Just as they were delivered to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, and here we get the person, O most excellent Theophilus. I think Theophilus is a person. Some have suggested Theophilus is a title or it's a generic name for all Christians, because Theo is God, Philos is friend of or lover of, so friend of God is the translation of the guy's name. So it could be that he's not a person, but I think it's a person. That you may know the truth concerning the things of which you've been informed. Apparently Theophilus is someone who has some basic information on Christianity, maybe not enough to form an opinion of it, or maybe forming a negative opinion of it. Perhaps he's a Roman official, that's a possibility, and Luke is writing him to say, you really need to know about this before you pass judgment on it. Here is the story. Here is the accurate story. The book of Acts will start by saying, in the first book I wrote about this, now I'm going to write about this, Theophilus. So the book of Acts is a letter or a book to the same person. Luke is going to show you a compassionate Jesus Christ. He's going to show you a Jesus who is concerned for women, is concerned for the downtrodden. He's going to show you a Jesus who is a Savior for all of mankind. And in future lessons, we'll look at a little more detail about how Luke does that. Which stories he highlights to make that point come through.